Dear students, today we will be going to study three angiosperm systems of classification, and I am your Rajkumar sir. These three systems are basically natural system, artificial system, natural system, and phylogenetic system. We will study these three systems of classification. According to A.P. de Candolle, the taxonomy means the science of identifying, naming, and classifying plants. This word was first given by de Candolle in his famous work Theorie Elementaire de la Botanique. Taxonomy is often defined as the science dealing with the study of classification, including its basis, principles, rules, and procedures. In Vriksha Ayurveda, which was compiled by Prashar Rishi, this is the science of plants and plant life, and formed the basis of plant teachings and medicinal uses of plants. As I told you, there are three systems of classification of plants. One is artificial system, second is natural system, third one is phylogenetic system. First, the artificial system. The early systems of classification starting from 300 BC up to about 1830 and comprise this system of classification, the artificial system of classification. This system of classification is based on one or a few easily observable characters of plants such as habit, like trees, shrubs, herbs, etc., or floral characters, particularly the number of stamens and carpels. Such type of classification using some arbitrary or at least easily observable characters, often irrespective of their affinity, this is called as artificial system of classification. मतलब ये है कि हम जो हैं एक ही कैरेक्टर या तो एक कैरेक्टर के ऊपर या कुछ जो हैं ईजिली ऑब्जर्वेबल कैरेक्टर जो हैं उन्हीं के बेस के ऊपर एफिनिटी नहीं ध्यान में रखनी हम लोगों ने कि आपस में इनकी रिलेशनशिप कैसी है, वो नहीं कि कैरेक्टर के बेस के ऊपर ही हम सारे प्लांट्स को ग्रुप्स में बांट रहे हैं, तो वो आर्टिफिशियल सिस्टम ऑफ क्लासिफिकेशन हो जाता है. प्लांट्स दे आर ग्रुप्ड अकॉर्डिंग टू द नीड्स एंड कन्वीनियंस ऑफ द पीपल. जॉन रे, his system was far more advanced than the earlier systems of classification. First, the Theophrastus, he gave his system of classification in 370. He survived between 370 to 285 BC. He was a Greek philosopher and student of Aristotle. He is called as the father of botany. He classified plants on the basis of form and texture in herbs, shrubs, and trees, on the basis of life duration into annuals, biennials, and perennials. He described 480 species of plants in his book Historia Planetarium and Inquiry into Plants on the Causes of Plants. Prasar Rishi from 250 BC to 120 BC described plants in his Vriksha Ayurveda, the science of plant life. He described cultivation of 176 plant species, and he described the morphology and internal structures of plants and classified them into numerous families which were called as ganas. Charak in 1st century AD classified plants of medicinal importance in Charak Samhita. Pedanios Dioscorides in 62 to 128 AD, he described 600 plants of medicinal importance in Materia Medica, classified them into legumes, mints, and umbels as separate groups. Gaspard Bohine, he prepared an herbarium of 4,000 specimens. He published Phytopinax in 1596, Prodromus Theatri Botanici in 1620, Panax Theatri Botanici in 1623, and he described 6,000 plants. He introduced binomial nomenclature. He introduced or defined the terms nodes, internodes, simple and compound leaves, stamens, style, etc. And I told you, introduced binomial nomenclature, which was more publicized by Linnaeus. John Ray, from 1627 to 1705, he was an English taxonomist and wrote Methodus Plantarum Nova in 1682, Historia Plantarum in 1683. He classified the plant kingdom into two groups, and Herbae and Arbori. Herbae into two groups, Perfecti. Imperfecti included cryptogams or flowerless plants. Perfecti included the seed plants or the flowering plants and classified in them into two groups, monocots and dicots. Arbori included the trees which were classified into two groups, the monocots and the dicots. Carolus Linnaeus, from 1707 to 1778, is called as the father of modern botany. He classified plants on the basis of sexual system in his work Genera Plantarum and Class Plantarum. It is an artificial classification which uses only one attribute, that is the number of stamens, for grouping plants into 24 classes, as a result of which various unrelated taxa, which are not at all related but similar in one respect only, have been placed under the same class. He is also regarded as the father of a binomial system of nomenclature. He revised his work in Philosophia Botanica and Species Plantarum. He described 730 species in about 1000 genera. The natural system system of classifications are two-dimensional, that is, they are based on data available at any time, and is also known as horizontal classification, whereas the addition of the third dimension, that is the past history or the ancestral history, results in the phylogenetic classification, which is also called as vertical classification or evolutionary classification. Natural system. These systems of classifications are based upon overall resemblances, mostly in gross morphology, thus utilizing as many taxonomic characters as possible to group taxa. Charles Darwin proposed the theory of evolution in 1859, which postulates that the present day plants have descended from those existing in the ancient past through a series of modifications in response to changing environmental conditions, which means that all present day plants are related to each other in one way or the other. Thus, the closely related plants should naturally be grouped together. This is called natural system of classification. Thus, larger the number of characters shared by different taxa, the more closely related they are to each other. This is the basis of modern system of classification. D. Jesu in Genera Plantarum 1759 divided the plants into 15 classes and 100 orders, primarily based on the number of cotyledons and addition of plants. George Bantham and J.D. Hooker described 97,205 species of plants and gave their description based on their original and personal observations, divided the entire plant kingdom in non-seeded plants and seeded plants. Seeded plants were further grouped in three classes: dicots, gymnosperms, and monocots. They placed gymnosperms in between dicots and monocots, which was an anomaly. ये गड़बड़ था, थोड़ा सा इसमें गलती थी उनकी, लेकिन इतना बड़ा सिस्टम ऑफ क्लासिफिकेशन देने में माइनर मिस्टेक्स तो होने लाजमी हैं. ये नेग्लिजिबल मिस्टेक्स हैं जो कि बाद के ऑथर्स ने करेक्ट किए हैं. ये सिस्टम ऑफ क्लासिफिकेशन जो हैं आज भी फॉलो किए जाते हैं. कार्ल वॉन लेन, ही लैटिनाइज्ड, ओरिजिनल नेम वॉज कार्ल वॉन लेन. इसका जो इन्होंने जो अपना नाम था लैटिनाइज कर लिया बायनोमियल नॉमेनक्लेचर के हिसाब से, और अपना नाम क्या रखा? कैरोलस लिनियस. He lived between 1707 to 1778. He was a Swedish botanist. The classification is based on floral characters. He wrote the books Hortus Upalandicus in 1730, Flora Laponica in 1737. In his System Naturae 1735 presented an outline of sexual system of classification. Hortus Cliffortianus and Genera Plantarum in 1737. Species Plantarum in 1753 included all the species of plants known to him. He was the first one to establish the binomial system of nomenclature. In fact, this system of classification, which we learned earlier, was started by Caspar Bohn. Michael Adenson in 1720, from 1726 to 27 to 1806. He was a French botanist. He classified plants and animals using as many characters as possible, and this was his natural system of classification. He published his famous De Plantis in 1763. His theory is also called as phonetic taxonomy, which served as the basis of numerical taxonomy. Jean B.P. Lamarck, Baptiste P. Lamarck, lived between 1744 to 1829. He was a French naturalist. He wrote Flore Francaise 1778, which contained a key for the classification of plants. जो plants की हम keys use करते हैं वो originally इन्होंने देनी शुरू करी थी. Antoine Laurent de Jussieu, 1748 to 1836, he published his Genera Plantarum in 1789, gave his system of classification. 3 groups of plants were recognized by him: acotyledons, monocotyledons, and dicotyledons. He classified them into 15 classes and 100 orders. The plants were grouped on the basis of resemblances with each other in set of characters. Augustin Pyramus de Candolle, A.P. de Candolle, from 1778 to 1841, he gave his Theorie Elementaire de la Botanique in 1813 and proposed new system of classification of plants and introduced the term taxonomy. According to his system of classification, the plants can be grouped into 2 categories, 2 groups. Vascular bundles are present into 2 classes. These were further grouped into 2 classes. Class 1 exogeny dicots, class 2 endogeny. Class 1 exogeny were further grouped into 2 categories, 2 groups: Diploclamidae and Monoclamidae. Endogeny into 2 groups: Phanerogamy, which included monocots, and Cryptogamy, which includes the Thallophytes. The cellularis, no vascular bundles are present. The class 1 was Foliaceae, which included mosses and liverworts. Class 2, Aphilae, included algae, fungi, and lichens. The classification system of George Bantham 1800 to 1884 and Joseph Dalton Hooker 1817 to 1911. These are the photographs. They were wonderful botanists, taxonomists. They were English botanists basically and classified plants based on their original studies of the specimens. They studied 97,205 plants thoroughly and gave, on the basis of those thorough studies, proposed their system of classification, which is still adopted by many. It is one of the easiest systems of classification. They published their system of classification in 3-volume book, which is named as Genera Plantarum in 1862 to 1883. This book was published in Latin language. This book was written in Latin language. बेस्ट सिस्टम फ्रॉम प्रैक्टिकल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू, बहुत अच्छा सिस्टम है प्रैक्टिकल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से. अगर देखें तो एक कैरेक्टर्स के बेस के ऊपर आसानी से आप प्लांट्स को आइडेंटिफाई कर सकते हैं, ग्रुपिंग कर सकते हैं। फिर हमारी आती है, अच्छा इसके डिटेल्स हम बाद में पढ़ेंगे, हमारे सिलेबस का पार्ट भी है, फाइलोजेनेटिक सिस्टम ऑफ क्लासिफिकेशन। द क्लासिफिकेशन सिस्टम प्रपोज्ड आफ्टर डार्विन थ्योरी ऑफ एवोल्यूशन 1859 are mostly phylogenetic, that is they use as many taxonomic characters as possible in addition to phylogenetic interpretations. The term phylogeny was coined by E. M. Haeckel in 1866. Initially, plants were classified according to their increasing complexities, beginning with the simplest forms and proceeding to the most complex. These are expressed in the form of phylogenetic trees or shrubs showing presumed evolution of the groups. Several phylogenetic systems were proposed, but none of them accounts for the true relationship because of insufficient knowledge on evolutionary origin of plants. So, all present day phylogenetic systems are based both on natural and evolutionary evidences. The phylogenetic system of classifications are mainly the rearrangement of natural systems using as many taxonomic characters as possible in addition to the phylogenetic evolutionary information. These systems of classification were given by many scientists like Eichler in 1839 to 1887. A.W. Eichler, he was a German botanist, proposed phylogenetic system of classification in third edition of Syllabus der Verlassungen in 1883. Maybe the pronunciation may waver slightly, but excuse me for that. Cryptogamy were grouped in three categories: Thallophyta, Bryophyta, and Pteridophyta. Phanerogamy in gymnosperms and angiospermy into monocots and dicots. Then came the system of classification of Adolf Engler and Carl Anton Eugen Prendtl. Engler and Prendtl system of classification. This is also included in CBLU Bhivani's syllabus. They were German botanists and classified. This classification is based on evolutionary sequences, started from the simplest and primitive flowering plants and ended with highly evolved plants of complex floral characters. They published their work in 23 volumes of Die Naturalischen Pflanzen Familien from 1887 to 1915. See the quantum of labor they put into their work. For more than say 25 years, 28 years, they were working for this. Engler and Prendtl system of classification is the plant kingdom is classified into Spermatophyta, Embryophyta, which included two groups, gymnosperms and angiosperms. Gymnosperms included 7 orders: Cycadophylicales, Cycadales, Benititales, Jingoiles, Coniferales, Chordatales, Netales. Angiosperms into 2 classes, monocots and dicots. Monocots included 11 orders, 45 families. Dicots included 44 orders and 261 families. Dicots were further grouped into 2 categories, Archiclamidae and Metaclamidae. Archiclamidae included 33 orders and Metaclamidae included 11 orders. Then the Charles Edwin B.Sc system of classification, which was another phylogenetic system of classification from 1845 to 1915. He was an American botanist, published his classification in Annals of Missouri Botanical Garden 1915 as Phylogenetic Taxonomy of Flowering Plants, considered monophyletic origin of angiosperms from Benititalian ancestry. 2 evolutionary lines arose from Cycadioid ancestor Rennelian line and Rosalian line. He believed Rennales in dicots and Alismatales in monocots were primitive. Now the outline of B.Sc's classification. They were grouped into 2 classes. Class 1 was Alternifoliae, Monocotyledone, subclass 1, Strobiloideae, and subclass 2, Cotyloideae. The class second included the dicots, Oppositifoliidae. It, it included two subclasses, subclass 1, Strobiloideae, with three superorders, superorder 1, Apopetly, Sympetly, and the Sympetly, Apopetly, polycarpillate, Sympetly, polycarpillates, Sympetly, dicarpillate. Subclass 2, Cotyloideae, which included two superorders, Apopetly and Sympetly. Then the Randall's Alfred Barton Randall, 1862 to 1938. He was an English botanist, proposed phylogenetic system of classification resembling anglers. Three grades in dicots were recognized: Monoclamidae, Diapetly, petals free, Sympetly, petals fused. Then the John Hutchinson's system of classification from 1884 to 1972, who was a British botanist, published classification in genera of flowering plants from 1964 to 1967 and families of flowering plant in 1973. His system was based on 24 principles. If you go for MSc classes, you have to learn up those 24 principles. We are not mentioning here. And divided the flowering plants in 420 families, considering dicots, primitive, and monocots. Advanced. Among dicots, magnoliales were considered to be most primitive. Hutchinson system of classification, angiosperms were grouped into two groups, dicotyledone and monocotyledone. Divisions: Lignaceae and Herborae. Monocots are grouped into Calliciferae, and Glumiflorae. Armen Takhtajan, 1910 to 1997, was a Russian botanist, proposed classification in 1954, gave his last version in 1997. He believed that the angiosperms are monophyletic in origin and evolved from some very ancient group of gymnosperms. His system of classification: class Magnoliopsida, which included dicots, had the orders of Magnoliidae, Ranunculidae, Hamamelidae, Caryophyllae, Delenidae, Rosidae, Estridae. Class Liliopsida, which included monocots, included the groups Alismatidae, Lilidae, Ericidae. Next, the Arthur John Conquest, 1919 to 1992. He was an American botanist. He published Phylogenetic System of Classification in Evolution and Classification of Flowering Plants in 1968, whose final version was given in 1988 in Integrated System of Classification of Flowering Plants. Conquest classification included division: Magnoliophyta, angiosperms, class 1, Magnoliopsida, dicots, class 1, subclass 1, Magnolioideae, Hamamelidae, Caryophyllae, Delenidae, Rosidae, Estridae. Class 2, Liliopsida, with subclasses Alismatidae, Ericidae, Comilanidae, Gingiviridae, Lilidae. Then the Thorne is Robert Thorne's system of classification, 1968 and 1992. He was an American taxonomist, proposed incorporated the role of phytochemistry in taxonomy and applied the principal priority up to class rank. His system of classification: class Angiospermae, subclass 1 Dicotyledone, included 19 superorders, 41 orders, 56 suborders, 297 families, 350 subfamilies, and 9,640 genera, and 1,73,370 species. Subclass 2 Lilidae included monocots included 9 superorders, 12 orders, 17 suborders, 53 families, 102 subfamilies, 2615 genera, and 52,120 species. With this, we end with today's lecture, and thanks for watching. Recommend this lecture to your friends and subscribe the channel so that good work can be promoted, and we feel motivated to provide lectures. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.